Hello and welcome to another video by Apex, the Aviation Photography Edit Exchange, and this week, or this time, we have an image sent in by Martin Mikulecky, who is Martin_M_photography on Instagram, and he wanted some advice on this image and what can be done with it. So in this video I'm just going to break down how I took this rather frustrating image with the harsh light and maybe this clipped wing to turn it into something that looks more than usable and something with sort of a Top Gun, nice warm orange vibe going on. So let's start in the right image first, and let me talk you through how I achieved that. So to start with, I opened it up in the develop module, and I sort of had to set myself somewhere to start. Where do I want to take this image? What can be done with it? So he did ask whether this could be saved or recovered. Now, saved or recovered, that's quite an ambiguous statement. There is detail here. We've certainly not clipped anything in the shadows, but it's going to be tough because the light just isn't falling on it. We can see exactly where the light's coming from. It's coming from behind and in front, from up in this top corner up here. So in order to do anything with this photo, it's going to have to embrace that area. And there's something else about this that we can also identify, is this here. This red demonstrates the area that is clipped. Now clipping means the detail when you're capturing an image and it's represented, it means the detail in the image is lost. And you know, you're probably fully aware of the histograms. So we have the blacks, the shadows, the midtones, highlights, and the whites. Now, that's the representation of any image. So if I looked at that histogram without even looking at the image, I could tell you straight away that there's a lot of information going to be missing. It's clipped. It's gone. It's gone off the end of that graph and gone. Your camera cannot capture any more information because it was just too bright. So that is represented in this large area here, and we can show that by clicking on that little box at the top there. So to start with, I'm going to have to bring this back just to see what we're kind of dealing with here, and bringing that exposure back, and we've lost the clipping, but to demonstrate, there's no detail there. It's clipped, so you're going to get this white milky grey colour, which just means there's no detail there. And so we're going to have to use Photoshop to correct this wingtip down here. I mean, we could crop into it, but the image looks a bit tight and there's a lot going on, so let's reset the crop and we should sort that out in Photoshop. But to start with, I'm going to make sure my lens corrections are ticked, and this will identify the make of the lens you were using and just apply a default set of settings to that image to correct them. So next I want to try and deal with some of these lens flares. I could do this in Photoshop, but for argument's sake we'll do it in Lightroom, and I'm just going to use the normal bog standard heal tool. Actually, I'll go nice and big over that. Just get rid, whoops, start again with those. Just get rid of some of these nasty little flares on the image. And there's a couple of big ones here, especially over the jet. These might be a bit more tricky to get rid of. And I'm not going to worry too much about any detail missing on the jet because I'm going to have most of this in shadow anyway. there's no detail there. I just want to get rid of this unsightly colour, as it were. That one there is going to be a little bit more tricky, so I will do that one in Photoshop. So that's cleaned it up to somewhere I want to go with that image. As you see from the edit I've done earlier, which I'm going to try and replicate for you now, is I've embraced that warm look, and I've embraced the shadows and brought this image into something that's quite far removed. And as you can see, we've had to recover or create detail that just wasn't there, and I'll show you how to do that now. So we simply just go to Edit in Photoshop, and that's going to take this image straight over to Photoshop, load it up for us, and I'll just zoom out for you. So this is loaded up the photo in Photoshop. So you can see from that previous edit that I did that I'm going to embrace the angle of the jet, but I want it travelling from the bottom corner to the top. We need to lose this negative space over here, and a nice crop that works well for Instagram is the 4x5. And to turn it to portrait, you just press the X key in the crop tool. Now I'm going to ignore the boundaries of the image. I'm going to make sure generative expand is clicked up here, and I'm going to twist the image and rotate it around and ignore the boundaries of the shot. I'm also going to cycle through the crop guides until you get this nice diagonal one. And if you want to change the direction of the diagonals, just hold Shift and O, and it's O to cycle through them. Shift and O will change them around. I'm just going to follow that diagonal line to somewhere that looks fairly nice. You know, Alt key to expand it in the same direction. I'm thinking something a little like that. Looks quite good, doesn't it? And now I'm not going to prompt the generative expand. I'm just going to let it do its own thing and see what Photoshop's brain can do. Okay, wait for it to work its magic. And there we go. It's done a pretty good job of generating an entire wingtip that was missing. And in this case, it looks like the third option is the best. Nice and natural, blended into the sky. Lovely stuff, really. If you're not happy with the 3 variations it gives you, you can just hit generate again and it will give you another 3. I don't tend to prompt anything. The moment you start prompting, it starts to try and generate things that just do look a bit unnatural, so I tend to leave that blank. So let's go to there. So we're happy with the crop, and now it's just a case of dealing with that nasty little speck behind the cockpit. Now I need to make this into full screen, and come down from the crop tool and make sure I've got the remove tool selected, and hold Z to bring up the zoom and zoom over this. Now I expect it will remove some of this, whether it's oxygen bottle or something behind his head, but nobody who sees this image off the bat is going to know that. So I'm just going to make a selection over it and then press enter to start the remove, and there we go. That's got rid of it very nicely. I'm also going to have a quick look around. There seems to be a little bit of greening just here, so I'm just going to use the heal tool, this remove tool, sorry, to get rid of that. Speck of something here, I'll get rid of that as well. And let's just zoom out and make sure we're happy with the shot. So you could edit from here in using the camera raw filter, which is very similar to Lightroom, has most of the same functions. You do miss out on that nicely catalogued way that Lightroom highlights to work. So to do that, we're just going to press save, and because we brought this into Photoshop from Lightroom, it's just going to create a TIFF file, flatten the image, which means it'll take away most of those any things we did to the edit earlier, and there it is, opened up in Lightroom, saved as a TIFF file. So now we can close Photoshop, and I'll get this into full screen. And as you can see in history panel, there's nothing happened before it because it's a new file. You can think of this as a new image. And as you can see here, I maybe not have done the crop quite the same as I did before, but there we go. And you can see here the TIFF file just there. Which tells us let's come in from Photoshop. So let's open this up in the develop module, and now we can treat it as a normal image. So I'm going to drop the saturation to start with, and I'm going to bring just until it starts to clip. I'm not going to touch the whites, because if we try to recover that information, as we said, it's just going to end up grey and nasty. I don't want to raise the shadows really, because all that's going to happen is it's going to bring out that haze, and for the silhouette look I'm trying to achieve, I'm not going to do that, and I might just pull the highlights back a little bit. But you know that greying effect you talked about, I am going to add something into that top corner a little further down the edit to show you what can be done there. So I'm going to do something like that's good. A little bit of that. I'm going to leave the overall exposure one alone, and let's bring back the colour. So as you can see from what we tried to recover, we've got some bandings of colour going on. This could be the sun hitting the lens elements, or refraction in the clouds, and it just gets unsightly. So let's boost up. Excuse me. I don't want to go too far. I'm thinking something like +20 is good. And you can see there's some green as well starting to appear in this. So I have to try and balance that out with the tint. But I will do something else later on, which introduces that more orange look. So now, having done with that, let's have a look and see what the presence panel can do. A little bit more dehaze on this will help to bring out those detail in the clouds behind. Darken that jet a bit more. Let's use the clarity as well. Don't want to go too high on this. This is how you end up with nasty halos. That looks good. That looks good. Texture, that's only gonna, it's not gonna help much in this situation, especially with the silhouette look. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now use the tone curve and just bring up the highlights a little bit, and this is a nice way of introducing some quite nice looking contrast, and just dip the dark areas down here, which of course that just represents your histogram. As you can see up here, it's the same, although condensed into this square box, it's very much the same. So now come down to the colour, and I'm just going to work through these individual colour channels. There's not much red happening. I expect there's a lot of orange happening. I'm just going to dial that back. A lot of yellow in this image as well. Go too far to the right, it goes too green. Too far to the left, and it goes pink to orangey red sort of colour. So I'm just going to pull this down, something like that. A lot of green happening in this image. As you can see that changing on the jet. So I'm just going to pull the greens right down. Not much aqua happening. No blue. Don't expect there to be much purple. No. And magenta. No. So we can leave those alone. So we knew the reds didn't do anything, so I come straight to the oranges, boost them. Same for the yellows. Don't want to go too much because we're also boosting some unsightly colours that are going on there. Take the green away. Nothing in the aqua we know before. I'm going to boost the orange a little bit. Take the yellow down, up, down, down, or up. It's about there. And see, by pulling the greens, we're just dealing with some of those healing marks I made earlier. So I'm just going to pull that up to the full, and that's just going to help to hide them. I'm not going to touch any of the others. Now I'm going to come to the colour grading panel. So this used to be called split toning back in the day, and basically this is the area of Lightroom we can use to add colour into the image. So you have shadows, the midtones and the highlights. The highlights is a nice place to start, and I'm going to use orange. You can also use this slider, which it may look like that to you. Just drop that down to bring it, if you don't like using the colour wheel, something like that, and let's just drag in some nice warmth. Something like that looks quite good. A little play around with the luminance of that. That looks quite good. Into the midtones. Now, something that can go for any image is you don't have to add colour in using this panel. You can actually use this nice little slider here in the midtones. If you've got an image that feels just lacking something, you can just drag this midtone slider up, and it just gives your image a lovely little boost. I'm going to do that here. Just to plus 25, and then we're also going to add a little bit of orange to yellow in. Something like that, and now to the shadows, and I'm actually going to counteract that with a bit of complementary blue. Just push that slightly into the shadows. It won't be much noticeable. If you can drag this, a nice way of achieving a quick matte film effect, but in this case I'm going to leave that alone, and now we can just play around with the blending options. Where did that look better? Where does it look best? Balance up a little bit, balance down, or up, down, up, something like that. And I might just add overall to the image a bit more of that orange effect and brighten it up slightly, and immediately that's already looking pretty similar to what we have here. But there are a couple of other things that I'm going to do, subtle effects to this image. So I'm going to come back to the sharpening and everything. I'm actually going to hit the masking now and use a radial gradient and drag this off the page and away into the frame, something like this. And then I'm going to make sure that I can then come down to the clarity, take that down to something like minus 27 maybe, something like that, minus 31 in this case. Take the texture now, not as much texture, quite a heavy slider. Take the dehaze down quite a fair bit, and now I'm going to use the subtract function and just take it off the subject, like so. Might also boost a bit more warmth into that. And we'll just quite like that, just a little bit brighter. So just like that. Now I'm going to use a linear gradient and come from the bottom left up to the top of the frame. I'm holding the Alt key to make sure it's really feathered. If you don't hold the Alt key, it will drag from the middle, and the middle of this gradient is, just think of that as a it's the midpoint of that filter. If you were using a graduated filter on the end of your camera, you'll often see them like this, like harder edged. That means that there's less distance between where the effect finishes and where the effect starts. So I want to, let me actually go back. In fact, let me just draw that one again. So let me delete that. And I'm going to just click in this bottom corner, holding the Alt key, and drag across the entire image to this top corner and let go, and I'm just going to tone that area back. In fact, maybe not quite as harsh as that. Whites down a little bit. Maybe could just punch in a little bit of dehaze, as if it's flying up towards that sun. Now let's have a look at the overall colour. Nice and high on the vibrance, but let's take some of that colour away. Maybe a little bit more in the overall white balance. A little tweak. Let's come up more. Something like that. The saturation here, we can actually use this little dropper, punch that up a little bit more. Let's push a bit more into the highlights. That's looking much better, and now we can sharpen. Just going to keep an eye on that thing. Not much detail to sharpen here, so I'm going to add in a bit of sharpening, then hold the Alt key and drag that masking up to full, because we only want the edges sharp here. Something like that's my go-to amount of sharpening, really. Increase the radius. I'm not going to touch the detail because there's not much detail there to sharpen. Use the lens corrections, which we don't need to do because we've done that in the previous edit before we took it into Photoshop. And there's going to a couple of things one more thing I'm at least going to do to this. Let's grab a brush, and one of the things I really like about this image is the fact you can see the pilot's head or helmet silhouetted against that canopy. So I am going to just paint into this canopy. Like so. And to help cut through that glass, I'm going to use a bit of clarity, contrast, and then I'm going to brighten that area just to help bring out the thing. And I just want to use a small darkening brush, take the shadows away, just I need to make that a little bit less harsh. Whoops. Just to remove the obvious signs of effect of those little brush strokes we used earlier. Not really helped quite the way I wanted it to. Must have got lucky the first time round I've done this. Let's see what that can do. Just remove the obvious signs of that adjustment. That's a bit better. I'll just refine that. Content aware. I realise what I've done. This is something which makes Lightroom quite difficult is when you're still using that same window for using a heal tool. If you then change it, it will also change the last healing instruction that you made, which is really quite annoying. So let me try that again. I just want to remove the obvious signs of where we've made that brush stroke. That's better. A little bit there. There and there. Hopefully that will blend in to make it just a little bit more natural. Not sure. I must have missed a step. Maybe missed a step. No, I didn't. So the two images now looking quite similar. So there's my original one. So I did get the angle slightly higher on that one, and colour slightly differently, but that is pretty much what I did. We can bring this back a little bit, line it up like so, and there we go. So that's what I did to achieve that sort of Top Gun warm light feel. And thank you very much to Martin for sending this in. Definitely, Lightroom's running a little bit slow here. So there is my official finish edit. You can see I didn't do too much differently, but I did get those healing spots on the nose a little bit better. But yes, let me know what you think, and of course if you've got your own image you would like to send in to us, we can do that by either joining the Facebook group, which is called Apex, the Aviation Photography Edit Exchange. Just make sure you request, agree to the group rules and request the group joining instructions, because it's quite important. We're dealing with other people's images, so we want to make sure that they're in a safe space, not going to go being shared with anybody else. Obviously drop us a like, let us know what you think in the comments on this YouTube channel, and like I say, if you've got your own image you'd like to send in, then please don't hesitate to do that. We have an email address too, which is, let me make sure I get this right, it's the Aviation Photography Exchange at gmail.com, and you can send us in your own submissions there, or just make contact with us with that. Yeah, so hopefully that's just a little insight at what could be done with a very difficult image, and hopefully you can take something away from this video. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully see you in the Facebook group.